What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, joined by Trent and Kevol. We are here to discuss the Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Nashville Predators Stanley Cup Final for 2017. They start off tomorrow, game number 1, played in Pittsburgh. Can't wait to kick off the series. And of course, here on the Bottom Line View, as we always do, we'll have you covered for the NHL. We'll have you covered with game recaps of every single game of the series. And maybe even in a game 6 or a game 7, we'll have a live reaction video. Thank you guys for supporting that live reaction that we did not so long ago for the Senators and Penguins. That was a lot of fun to do. So hope you guys do enjoy that. And really just hope you guys enjoy all the content we have putting out there for the NHL. It's been a lot of fun to do. We're nearing the end of this season, and near the end always means that we still need to crown a Stanley Cup champion. It's between the Penguins of the East and the Predators of the West. Who's going to take it? That's what we're going to discuss today. I want to hear what you guys have to think in the live comments or the comment section below. Let us know who's going to win. Is it going to be the Predators? Is it going to be the Penguins? How many games is it going to be? Is it going to be 4, 5, 6, or 7? Let us know. We love to hear from you. So, let us know. All right, guys. So we have the Pittsburgh Penguins who got by the Blue Jackets. They got by Washington. And they got by Ottawa, the last 2 being in 7 games. The Predators got by the Blackhawks, which nobody expected to happen, in a sweep diddly. Then they just got by Minnesota, St. Louis, in 6 games, which was pretty easy. And then they got by Anaheim in 6 games, which almost felt like 7 games, but it was 6 games. And they got by Anaheim in a pretty good series as well. And now this is where we're at. We're at Nashville. And we're at Pittsburgh. So, of course, I am a Pittsburgh fan. If you're new to the channel, I am a Pittsburgh fan. Trent, Canucks fan. Kevol, a Flames fan. So we have some pretty good perspective here. First off, Trent, what do you expect from the Stanley Cup Final? What are you expecting an exciting series? Are you expecting a long series? What are you expecting from this Stanley Cup Final?
Well, without a doubt there, Mitch, you have to be expecting that this will be a very exciting final. I mean, you look at it from the Pittsburgh Penguins perspective, and they have the chance of repeating for their 2nd time in their entire franchise's career, the first time since like the 90s that they've done it, and like the first time since like the Avalanche or the Red Wings did it in the early 2000s or late 90s, the first time a team has been able to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. And then you look at the opposite side of the coin, and the Nashville Predators, kind of like a San Jose Sharks perspective, but even more exciting because the Nashville Predators had never made a Western Conference Final until this year. This year was the first time that they had ever made the Western Conference Final. Automatic success, hold your heads high going into the series of making the Western Conference Final, getting out in 6 convincing games, and now getting a chance for your first ever Stanley Cup Final. I mean, they're going to be super excited. I know that they have some pretty serious injuries, but nevertheless, this is going to be an exciting series because it's going to be 2 dynamos of teams facing off against each other. So we're in for the long haul of a great series there, Mitch.
What about you, Kevol? What do you got to say, bro? I guess Kevol's got to say nothing. Kevol, you there?
So one of the things that you have to do when you're on the Google Hangout is you have to hit the mute button to speak. So then when you do that, that 1 year of broadcasting school really helped me out to learn that one thing, Trent. Anyway, thank you. Can I bring up, I'm going to bring up what I'm excited about and what I hate about this. Can I do both?
Absolutely.
I'm excited because I think the 2 teams, I think that we're going to have some really good hockey. I think it's going to be really intense. I think the crowds are going to be great in both Pittsburgh and Nashville. I think that everything will be, that will be exciting. This is what I hate. After game 5 or game 4, let's go through the dates. So we got the game tomorrow. game Wednesday, 2 days off. Then we're playing Saturday, Monday again. Then another 2 days off for game 5, game 6, game 7. This is 17 days. This is going to be long. With so much time.
They're trying to milk it as much as they possibly can, Kev.
This is long. That's long, though.
I understand what you're trying to say. But, well, like the first one where it's a 2-day off, it's on a Saturday. And I understand why they want to do that. They don't want to have the game on Friday night. They'd rather have it on a Saturday night. Totally understand that. Then they go back Monday. Then you said they have a 2-day off.
Yep.
So would that mean they're off on, or they're back on Thursday?
Yep.
Yep.
And then they would be on Sunday.
Yep. So
that's the end of the series?
The end of the series, if it goes to a game 7, Wednesday, June 14th.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're just trying to prolong it just so it's like everything lines up nicely. Because like slightly less than a week after that is the expansion draft. And then slightly a week after that is the regular draft. So they're trying to get it as much NHL as they can.
Also, guys, you have to factor in the NBA Finals.
That's true.
They don't want to have it on the same day most of the time. They usually want to spread it out. So one day is NBA, one day is NHL. I'm sure that they try to coordinate that between the two leagues. I think NBA is ending even after that, but I'm not. Well,
that's sure. Starting Thursday, June 1st, and ending Sunday, June 18th. If it goes to 7,
yeah.
Right. So that's a 7. But it's a lot to ask for an audience that has already invested. I think it would be nice to be a little bit quicker, but I get it.
Now let's talk a little bit about the audience. I at least want to talk about that because going into this series, one of my biggest concerns of game 7 between Ottawa and Pittsburgh was not just because I'm a Pittsburgh fan that Pittsburgh would lose, but the second concern from just a hockey fan perspective, wanting to see the game grow and wanting to see the game have good ratings. I was concerned that if the Senators played the Predators, that the ratings would not be that good. But now that we have Pittsburgh, obviously a team that's trying to go for history. And then on the other side, you also have a team that's trying to go for a little bit of history themselves, trying to win their first ever Stanley Cup. That's a little bit of something there. But I think just having that intrigue of potentially having a dynasty on our hands with Pittsburgh, I think that's a little bit more intriguing than Ottawa, and also having the big names of Crosby and stuff obviously helps, and Pittsburgh's a pretty big market, but I was a little bit concerned about that, but I think the ratings will be pretty good for this series. Do you guys think that the ratings will be pretty good?
I think that they would be much better than, as you said, Ottawa. Yes, Ottawa, they kind of had Canada watching behind them, but Canada was, just kind of relaxingly watching behind them. They were more watching it just to see maybe Ottawa would be able to make it, but if not, at least we see the greatest Canadian, kid in the NHL make the Stanley Cup final for the second year in a row. I think they're also watching the Crosby factor. And now that we have Malkin in there, that's going to be a big factor. Matt Murray, can the rookie steal another Stanley Cup, being the first rookie, I think, in history to win 2 Stanley Cups? He's still a rookie this year. He's still in Calder Cup contention this year because he was introduced so late into the season last year. So it's the kind of thing to win back-to-back Stanley Cups as a rookie goaltender. I mean, that's automatically a great goaltender right there. So there's a lot riding on this. And yes, I think the ratings would have been a lot better for this series had it been Pittsburgh versus Nashville, which is what we got, other than Ottawa versus Pittsburgh.
I would say to in response that I think the ratings will pick up as the series goes along. Tomorrow is a holiday, so I think probably lower ratings tomorrow and Wednesday. Once this gets into Nashville, I think it's going to pick up a little bit with the Nashville audience. But once it gets to 2 or 3 games for one of these teams, I think people are going to perk up. So I expect the audience to build as the series goes on, as it did in Pittsburgh, Ottawa as well. All
right. So we covered a little bit of the schedule. We covered a little bit about the TV ratings and the audience factor. Now let's start to dive into the teams and what we expect from the game plans and what we expect from both teams in the series, and also get at the very end our predictions for who is going to hoist the Stanley Cup in 2017. So let's first look at what the Pittsburgh Penguins have to do to go back-to-back as Stanley Cup champions. Now, I think if we look at both teams and we give the strength and weaknesses for both teams, I think you would look at the Pittsburgh Penguins as a team that is obviously very top-heavy with their forwards. They have a lot of depth with their forwards, and I think their forwards and their scoring is their biggest strength. Looking at their weaknesses, I think you could say potentially they are a little bit injury-prone, which does cause them to have, especially defensively, maybe a couple of holes defensively. They do have occasionally a really good performance defensively, but they can have a bad one as well. So I would say that their defense, not necessarily that it's bad, is their weakness of their team. While their goaltending, they have two very solid goalies, and Matt Murray, being the starter, has been excellent, right alongside Rene for Nashville. Actually, looking at the goaltender matchup, which I think is obviously crucial in a Stanley Cup final, last year we had Murray versus Jones, which was very much an even matchup. This year we have Rene, who's had one of the best goaltender resumes for a playoffs that we've ever seen, and then going to Matt Murray, who's trying to go back-to-back, who's since becoming the starter has had stats that are very on the same line as Rene. So it's a very even matchup. You have to look at Rene as being a goalie that's been, I guess, more tested throughout this playoffs. But of course, we know what Matt Murray can give you in the net as well. So I would say that's pretty even. Looking at the advantages for Nashville, you look at their defense, especially their top four defensemen being the advantage. Their bottom two aren't like sexy or anything, but they're okay. But their top four are pretty darn good. You have Yossi, you have Subban, you have Ekholm, and you also have who's the other guy I'm missing now? Ellis, the beard guy. Ellis. So you have those four guys who are top-notch D-men. Ellis could arguably a top two defenseman if he wasn't on Nashville. And, Pittsburgh, it's the forward versus the defense matchup with the goaltending kind of being the same. That's what I've heard from a lot of people. So what does Pittsburgh have to do in order to win? Now, if you look at the weaknesses for Nashville, their weakness primarily is depth in forward, but specifically depth in center. And what is the strongest position for Pittsburgh? It's probably their center position. They have arguably the two best centers in the entire league, throwing probably McDavid in that conversation and Backstrom as well. But Crosby and Malkin are two of the top five centers in the entire NHL. And if they could take advantage of a team without Johansson, who is their number one center for Nashville, then Nashville could have some issues with matching up in that regard. So it's going to be very interesting for that matchup. And if Pittsburgh's going to win this series, they're going to have to take advantage of the center. And not only will Crosby and Malkin have to take advantage, but also guys like Benito and Cullen. Cullen has been superb throughout these entire playoffs. He's never lost a Game 7, little known fact. And also Nick Bonino has started to play a little bit better offensively, but he's primarily been that penalty killer and the defensive guy for them that's kind of matched up with more of the offensive lines for the other team. So for Pittsburgh, I think they need to have the solid goaltending performance, pretty good defense. I think their defense needs to be involved in their offense, as we saw in the last couple of games against Ottawa. Specifically getting Justin Schultz back will be very nice for them. And then offensively, their centers need to do work and dominate. For Nashville, in my opinion, I think that they need to shut down Crosby and Malkin. They need to let other guys beat them. They need to, force Kessel, force the next guys down the line, whether that's Rust or Kessel or the Bonino line, to start scoring on them. Similar the way that when Ottawa won, we didn't see Crosby and Malkin score very much. So that's what they need to do. And they need to also have their defense be part of their offense, specifically with Johansson and Fisher maybe being out as well. They're going to even rely more heavily on their defense to score some goals for them, because that's going to be a very crucial part of their offense. Another thing is special teams in the Stanley Cup Finals. Whatever opportunities you do get on the power play, you need to score. We've seen some up and down power plays for both teams. Especially Pittsburgh, where they've been really hot and then kind of really weak. Nashville's been kind of more consistent, not as hot as when they're on. Pittsburgh is more on, but Nashville's kind of been more consistent. So power play is going to be a big thing. And then I think Rene is going to have to steal a couple of games in this series if they're going to win, But those, in my opinion, are the key components for both teams if they want to win this series. Do you guys see it similarly? Did I miss anything that you think is really important to add?
I think you pretty much nailed it all. One thing that I'd like to add, though, is Nashville is a very physical team, and I think that the Pittsburgh Penguins, they need to match that physicality. I mean, I was saying that since the Western Conference Final, that when they were facing the Anaheim Ducks, that's like the physical offense team, and Nashville is that physical defense team. And it's the kind of thing where looking up and down like the teams that they faced, honestly, they've not really faced a team with too much physicality. I mean, I guess that you can argue that the Columbus Blue Jackets are a little bit more of a physical team with the John Tortorella like mindset. But the thing is, they're young, they're foolish. You knew that they were going to lose that round no matter what. You know, Washington Capitals, they don't really have any of that physicality. They more look at their skill of TJ Sochi and, you know, Backstrom and Ovechkin when he decides to actually play. All that they have is really Tom Wilson. Then you look at, you know, the Ottawa Senators, where you had to have guys like Bobby Ryan and Mark Mathot step up to be a little bit more physical. And the teams that did step up to be a little bit more physical pushed it to a Game 7, which is a big X factor. You know, the Penguins, out of the 3 series that they faced, 2 of them have gone to Game 7. So they need to be able to face that physicality that Nashville has with the Austin Watsons, with those players that get right up in your face and aren't afraid to face wash you no matter who you are. They need to be able to match that, which honestly, they really don't have too many players on their team that can match that. On the injury front, however, surprisingly enough, you guys aren't looking that bad. Currently, you only have 3 injuries that are really marked down. I mean, you have Letang. Of course, he's never going to be coming back to these playoffs. Hornqvist, who's day-to-day still, and Chad Ruhwedel. Those are the only 2 players that you're really missing in this lineup right now that could possibly come back, Ruhwedel and Hornqvist. Meanwhile, Nashville, yes, they are a little bit more beaten up. They have Craig Smith, Joe Hansen, Fisher, all out, you know, possibly for the rest of the playoffs. And those are their top 3 centers right now. Yes, and we also have Kevin Fiala, but he's kind of the rookie, so I'm not really including him with the fractured femur because he's been out since basically Game 1 of the playoffs. But Nashville's pretty beat up too. I mean, Nashville, they need to continue up that physicality if they want to keep in that series. And players like Austin Watson need to keep on doing what they need to do. Get in the player's face, annoy those players, piss them off. And Pekka Rinne, yeah, he does need to steal a few games. But the way that Pekka Rinne has been playing this playoffs, I think he's definitely capable. And I like how you added that the defense needs to step up offensively, because I've seen that a lot with Nashville so far. They've been doing very well offensively on the power play during the special teams. I think that they're the best team with the special teams with their defense. Meanwhile, when you look at, you know, the Pittsburgh Penguins, their only real offensive defenseman right now is Justin Schultz. And honestly, they have so many more offensive, better defensemen with Nashville. So if those defensemen can get involved in the scoring play, I think it will be great for them and give them the chance to win the series. But physicality is the biggest point for me. Kev?
Well, for Pittsburgh, to me, I think my keys are a little bit different. I do agree with you. If I'm Pittsburgh, I think Game 1 is actually going to be very important. The way that I'm looking at the series is I think because of Nashville's home crowd, I see them looking at 2 wins based on that home crowd. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I want to go to Nashville with a 2-0 series lead. I think a series split is an advantage to Nashville because of the loudness of that crowd and the momentum of that crowd, I think is going to play a big factor in this series. So I think the way Pittsburgh starts is going to be very interesting. I also think Nashville has not had a Game 7 while Pittsburgh has played 2. So I think in terms of clutch play, that will be interesting. I do feel like Nashville has an edge in winger play overall because I do like Forsberg and Arvidsson and Neal. I think that they can compete in terms of top 6 if you take Crosby and Malkin out of that equation. I think the depth of both teams is going to be tested. I think Forsberg and Kessel will be 2 key pieces. And Pittsburgh's defense in terms of offense isn't that off. There's a few players with 7 points. They're not that far behind. I mean, the top 2 is obviously 2-point producers.
The thing about that is, Kev, is that they've come on very recently too.
Yeah.
Like Daly and Mata, 2, for example, have come on very recently with a number of points in the last series.
Yeah, so I mean, Ian Cole continues to get better. I mean, it's going to be, I think, the all-round play of this. And the other thing that Nashville hasn't dealt with that Pittsburgh has, and is what happens if there is an injury to one of these defensemen? Can we count on that seventh defenseman, whoever that will be, to be in? Because Nashville has been fortunate to being able to play all six defensemen all the way through the playoffs. I think that they were the only ones that were able to do it. So, and then goaltending, of course, will be a key factor. And I think who plays longer with the lead will be a big factor. I think Nashville is going to be one that wants to start with the lead as quick as possible. And whoever plays with that. So those are kind of my keys to victory as well.
Okay. So one thing I want to add is something Adam brought up because Adam is not here. So this was one of his key things that he thought. We'll give you Adam's prediction at the end as well. I think he pretty much said it already. If you were on the live reaction video between Ottawa and Pittsburgh, you pretty much already know where Adam is heading with this series. But one thing he brought up that I thought was very interesting, and I kind of sort of agree with him on this, is actually that as good as the Predators' defense has been, can they handle Crosby and Malkin because of how strong and good in possession they are when these guys aren't necessarily bigger and stronger? They're more offensive defensemen, kind of like Washington in a way, where, you know, they're kind of a little bit smaller but faster, and they're able to shoot the puck, pass the puck, and all that stuff, but they're not great at bumping someone off the puck and checking them, you know, behind the net, and going edge to edge with guys like Crosby and Malkin. And we saw at times, you know, guys like Ryan Getzlaf were able to have their way. So do you think this is a little bit concerning for Nashville, or do you think their defensemen will be absolutely fine with that? Do you think Crosby and Malkin will, you know, be dominant?
I think Crosby and Malkin, I don't know if they'll be dominant. They'll definitely be, you know, there. They'll be involved in the play. But you look at what Nashville has faced so far, and it's the kind of thing where they've shut down players like Patrick Kane, who was second in point scoring just this past year. Tied with second with, of course, Sidney Crosby. He was tied right with him. And it was the kind of thing where they shut him down for no points. He got no points this entire playoffs. You look at the next round. You look at Tarasenko. They shut him down for maybe one goal. He is one of the best goal scorers in the entire league, and they were able to shut him down. And then you look at how good Ryan Getzlaf has been, arguably the given Conn Smythe winner if he did go to the Stanley Cup final. And they shut him down also for basically 0 points. So it's the kind of thing where, yeah, you know what? Crosby and Malkin, they're going to be there. They're going to be giving it their all. But I think that Nashville, in some cases, will be able to stop them.
The answer to that question, in my opinion, is no. And I'm going to give two reasons why. And the first one goes back actually to the early 90s. The Pittsburgh Penguins played the Washington Capitals, interestingly enough, and they had 4 offensive defensemen, Hatcher, Calle Johansson, and a couple of other guys. And do you know who was on that team that beat them? Come on, Mitch, you got to know this.
Wait, what are you talking about?
The 4 offensive defensemen in the early 90s for Washington. Pittsburgh played them and beat them. Who was on that team?
Who was on Pittsburgh?
Yes.
Lemieux.
Who was the assistant? Who is a current assistant coach? Let me clarify. That was on that team.
Current assistant coach. Talk
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I think he's going to be. I think that they're going to employ some very similar ideas and a very similar game plan to what happened there. And Rick Tocchet is not a guy that gets a lot of credit for what he's done in Pittsburgh, but he is going to be a future head coach in this league. And he's been with Pittsburgh for a long, long time. So I think in terms of that, I think that Pittsburgh's going to have a game plan to stop that. And even if you go back to Game 7, and you know what, I was sitting and thinking about what Adam was saying too. If you go back to that Game 7, how hard it was at that point in double overtime, Game 7, to get Crosby off the puck when you're that exhausted, and now he's a little bit fresher. And I'm going to add the second thing to this, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more as we go forward. The biggest difference here, I think, is one. There's two differences. One, with Crosby has a Malkin, Getzlaf, Taves. There wasn't a number 2 center that really compared to a Malkin. That's one thing. But I think that, I mean, one of the things that I think is Crosby's on a mission. He's on a possibility here. We are talking about a guy that is possibly going to be in a conversation to be the top 5 greatest hockey player of all time. And there are people out there that are pushing his buttons and suggesting some 19-year-old punk kid from Edmonton is better than him after this 365-day run that he's been on. You don't think this is burning Crosby a little bit?
Well, we saw it in Game 7. The guy was unstoppable.
Yeah, he's on a mission. It's just, I think that the thing is I think that Crosby's at a little bit of a different level than where, as well as Getzlaf has played, as well as Taves' career has been.
Yeah,
Crosby's at a different level, and I would even say that he's carrying Malkin to that level too. So the answer to that question is no.
No, Nashville won't be able to stop them.
I don't think so. I really think that Crosby and Malkin are going to be dominating this series.
I do too. Now, does that mean they're going to be scoring a goal a game and they're going to be putting up tons of points? No. But I think they'll be dominating when they're on the ice, and when they have the puck, they'll be creating opportunities constantly. I don't think that they're going to be shut down, as in we don't see them. They're kind of invisible. They get 0 points. I think they'll dominate when they have the puck, and they'll create opportunities, and they'll get the points here and there. But Nashville will still, they won't go off for 2 points a game. That's what I'm saying. But they'll still be great, and they'll still be dominant, I think. Especially without the center depth that, Nashville is kind of lost. And without those guys helping in the equation, and Crosby and Malkin playing some of these younger and less veterans like centers, I think it will be an issue a little bit for Nashville, especially the more that the series goes on and wears on. But that's because I think Crosby and Malkin right now, and especially Crosby, are kind of just on a different level, like Kev said. And I do agree on your point with the guys fighting to be a top 5 player all time. So let's get to the chat real quick, because we have a lot of people in the chat as we are doing this live. So let's check the chat real quick. We have CBR Paul who says, "What's up, guys? I thought the Penguins had the trophy already." He says, "Pens in 7. Katana says, "Preds winning in 6. Music Wizard is in here. He says, "Preds in 6 or 7. He asks, "What's up, everybody?" Chauncey says, "Brother Nero, I knew you'd come. Hashtag beat up Kev." Katana says he's excited for this series. Von Hook says, "I want the Predators to win, but I think the Penguins will win." He says, "Hi, Mitch Marner. Go Predators." How old are you, Mitch Marner? I am currently 20 years old. I am turning 21 in September. Katana says, "I'd give Rene the edge." He says, Jeremy says, "Cavs or Warriors." I want the Cavs to win, but I sadly think the Warriors will win in 7. Sports Effect says, "Finally got here. My Wi-Fi has been horrible. What's going on tonight?" Von Hook says, "Mitch likes the Patriots and the Penguins because he's a cheater." Katana says, "Fisher will be back, Trent." Music Wizard also says, "Mike Fisher and Patrick Hornqvist will most likely be in the lineup for Game 1. Sports Effect asks, "Who will play with Crosby? Will Kunitz play with Sid?" I think that the Game 1 lineup will be Crosby, Hornqvist, and Gensel. That's my guess for the first line. Katana says, "I disagree that Crosby and Malkin will be dominating, not against Nashville's defense." Kev, do you have a reply to that?
Well, I think that one of the other issues with that is that depth in the middle. Nashville's been kind of fortunate in this sense to having a healthy Ryan Johansson. PK Subban has not been known to be an excellent defensive defenseman in any way, shape, or form. They'll have the flash. They're going to attack, but we're playing with a different stake here. We're playing with different chips. We're playing with a guy that is just hard to explain, but there's us normal.
It's like, okay, can I try and put this in perspective? Can I try?
Well, I'll add this.
Okay, it's like Getzlaf is like Ben Roethlisberger, and now you're playing Tom Brady. You know?
Yes,
no?
I would kind of similar. Yes, it's like Getzlaf is maybe Peyton. No, I wouldn't say Peyton Manning. Getzlaf is Aaron Rodgers. Like, he's almost there, but Crosby's going into that all-time great. That's what we're saying.
Okay. Brandon says, I live in Pittsburgh and everyone says the Pens are repeating history. Von Hook says, remember me? Yes, I remember you. Johansson is a sizable loss, but they've had others step up and play well. Von Hook says Tom Brady sucks. Anything else, guys?
Well, I think the last thing that we have to do is give our predictions of what we think the series will turn out to be.
No. Before we do that, I do think that this is an important. I do think we need to have this Crosby conversation, because we're in a mist, and I have the feeling. Sorry, just be spoiler, but I have a feeling all three of us are going to go the same way. If this happens, if Pittsburgh wins, where do we put Crosby in terms of the all-time?
I think he would be fifth. I think it would be, my personal list is Gretzky, Lemieux, or Howe, and then I would put Crosby.
Okay, so justify why you would put him fifth.
Because I think he's dominated an era. Now I'm echoing. Kev, can you go on mute real quick? Thanks. Okay, so he's dominated his era. You don't see many players in any sport dominate an era. But first off, you look at hockey history, right? We're talking about the 5 greatest players ever. Bobby Orr dominated his era. Gordie Howe dominated his era. Wayne Gretzky dominated his era. And right when Lemieux became the best player in the league while Gretzky was still in the league, and then dominated right after Gretzky kind of left. So you're talking about the 4 players that have dominated their eras and been the best players. Then you look at kind of and that's what Crosby has done. Ever since he came in the NHL in 2005, he's been at least in the top conversation as the best player. But basically since he won his first Hart Trophy, he's been considered the best player in the league every season, despite injury or not. So he's basically been the best player in the NHL for about 10 years now. So that is dominance in an era. And then this era, it's very hard to compare stats and stuff because the goals and the assists and the points are way off. But I think Crosby, another thing with him is he could play in any era. He could play in any style. He is a super intelligent hockey player. He pretty much has no flaws. He's gained great assets in the face-off dot where people thought he was weak early in his career. He's gotten a lot better defensively. He's an excellent passer, amongst the best ever. He can score. He's won multiple Rockets. You then compare him to other players and trophies. I mean, at number 5, I probably had Maurice Richard. And I think he was a winger, so he was kind of a one-dimensional player. He's probably one of the greatest scorers of all time. But really not much else. He was a very tough player, a good captain, won a lot of Stanley Cups, but he was kind of a one-dimensional player. I think Crosby's more of an all-around player. I also got in a conversation with one of the people on Facebook and Kev about Jágr, and I think Crosby has far surpassed Jágr. I think he's just an all-around better player, better leader, better winner. And then you look at the trophies as well, and sure, Jágr has won more Art Rosses, but Crosby's won every other trophy more times. I think, there's other players that have won more trophies and probably more awards, but Crosby's not really done yet. But I think the domination in an era and just standing out to be the best player at that time, I think is the reason why he's number 5. Because you throw out other players that would be around in the conversation. You might throw Richard, you might throw Bobby Hull, you might throw a bunch of guys. There's a ton of guys. Yager, you could throw a ton of guys in that conversation. Maybe you throw Lidstrom or Bork on defense. So I think Crosby is above all those guys in my opinion.
I think you also you keyed on one thing. I completely agree with you. I would also put him 5th. But the big thing for me as well is the kind of leadership that he has, and especially the leadership that he showed just this season and throughout his entire career. I mean, before Crosby, did anyone really know who Chris Kunitz was? He was just kind of a fourth liner on Anaheim who was 28 years old, basically a fourth liner for his entire career. Then he comes to Pittsburgh and he proves himself to be more than just that fourth liner. He proves himself to be a great grinder, a great scorer when he needs to be, as we saw in Game 7, 2 great goals. Who the hell thought that Jake Gunsel, the 3rd round pick, was going to be, one of the best rookie scorers in the first few rounds of the playoffs? He had something like 9 goals, and Maurice Rocket-Richard had 10 goals. That's because Crosby has been helping him out this entire season. Who knew who Rust was? Who knew who this Sheary guy was? All these guys were going to be bottom 6 guys that, Pittsburgh.
He makes people around him better.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. He's that kind of leader that you want in your team, that, he makes sure that the little guys are good before he focuses on himself. He's not that guy who's going to go out and try to score as many points as he's going to get. He's going to make the good passes when he sees that the good passes can be made. He'll put his body on the line here and there. I was not the biggest Crosby fan at the beginning of his career. In fact, I thought he was very overrated. But he's grown on me for quite a few years now, because I thought now, yes, he is finally that leadership role. And just the respect that he has for the game and the players around in the game. It's just an incredible thing to watch. And yeah, that's why he's also number 5 for me, just because he makes everyone around him better.
Trent, I want to throw something out here. And Kev, this is interesting, because I don't think anybody else has the resume that Crosby has in terms of both NHL, and that's including Gretzky, NHL and internationally. I don't think anybody has won more awards and a diversity of awards. This guy has Art Ross 2 times, Richard 2 times, Pearson Award 3 times, Hart Trophy 2 times, multiple time All-Star selection, Messier Leadership Award twice, Eastern Conference champion 4 times, 2 Stanley Cups, 1 Conn Smythe. What else we got? A World Junior silver and gold. He won Best Forward in 06 World Championship, leading scorer in the World Championship, 2-time Olympic gold medal, a World Championship gold medal, World Cup gold medal, and MVP and leading scorer. Who has all those awards? 7-time NHL Player of the Year. Who has all these things?
To be fair to Gretzky, though, he never had the chance to play in the Olympics.
Yeah, that's true. But Gretzky's the GOAT. I'm not debating.
Yeah.
It's better.
I think for me right now, my top 4 are Gretzky, and it's no in particular. Well, Gretzky number 1, but Howe or Lemieux would be in your 4. I think that you can debate Crosby, Messier maybe for 5th, but I think for me he sits in top 5. But what's the interesting thing about this is, if he wins, this is his 3rd cup, and Mario got 2, and he's also played. And to be fair to Mario, he went through Hodgkin's, and that was devastating. And he had a couple of injuries that shortened a career that quite possibly we could have legitimately argued, a number 1. I think that there was a lot more. I think in terms of talent, Mario was maybe a bit better than Gretzky. It's arguing Picasso versus Picasso, really, but but Crosby wins. He has 3 cups. Mario had 2. And Mitch just pointed out his rest of his resume. I don't know. Maybe there might be a legitimate argument to put him above Mario.
Nah, bro. Nah. Not now. Not now. Not maybe now. At the end of his career.
Well, I'm just saying I think I think that that's the exciting thing about this Stanley Cup final is
I do want to throw something. I do want to throw something else out there, and I'm echoing again.
Okay, well, let me finish my point and then I'll mute.
Go ahead.
I think that this is the exciting part of the Stanley Cup final is for the first time in a really long time, we have an opportunity for a repeat, and we have an opportunity to talk about legacy. And we haven't had and those are two interesting things that I think that face this here. I think that makes this Stanley Cup final so fascinating. Now I'll go ahead to throw this back to you.
Okay, so something I want to throw out there. Actually, I want to try and find a tweet here. But there's something that I found very interesting with Crosby. Okay, so this is the most playoff wins in NHL's salary cap era. Crosby has led a team to 87 playoff wins in this era, which is the most by 11. That's 11 more than Chicago. Chicago has 76. So you're talking about a guy that has to play not like he has to do this different from Orr, different from Howe, different from Gretzky, different from Lemieux, where he has to come in and he has to play with probably different line mates all the time. He has to play with different teammates, he's played with multiple coaches all the time. So this is a player that's had to play with a wide variety of talent, and he's done it in the salary cap era with 87 playoff wins. 87. Chicago, everybody talks about Chicago as the great dynasty, but again, we're talking about Crosby, but we could be talking about Pittsburgh as maybe being the true dynasty of this era.
Exactly. Then that brings another interesting part to that is the team Pittsburgh and where they sit in terms of this legacy, because we haven't had a repeat in a while. And it feels, I mean, kind of compared to the NBA Finals, we've got the Gretzky Jordan moments, and we have Crosby and LeBron, who I'm not saying Crosby's not going to challenge Gretzky ever. I'm not saying that, but we're in the midst of a special, something special, and I think it would be remiss of us to not to make sure we examine and look at that, because it feels historic to me.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun. There's a lot on the line for both teams. Nashville potentially winning their first Stanley Cup. Pittsburgh potentially becoming something that we haven't seen since the Detroit Red Wings in the late 90s. Back-to-back champions. And Sidney Crosby maybe being a top 5 player ever, according to the Bottom Line View. So we'll see what happens. But we need our predictions, guys, before we do leave. So I'm going to start with Fitty Trent. I'm going to go to myself. I'll give you Adam's prediction as well, and then we'll wrap it up.
What about Kev? Do
I get a prediction?
No, it goes Kev, and Adam, then me.
See, you left out Kev completely. Like, you're like, it was
you did.
Trent, Adam, and then me. And then I'm like, oh, poor Kev. Kev should totally get a say. So, my prediction for this Stanley Cup final, as we said, lots on the line. You know, you guys were a little bit more skeptical about Nashville's defense than I am. I kind of like their defense a little bit more. And because I like their defense a little bit more, and yes, because, you know, they are still so new to this, I'm still picking Pittsburgh. I still said that Pittsburgh was going to win the Stanley Cup all the way back when the season first started, because I said this is the best Crosby that we've ever seen will be this year. And without a doubt, I have been correct in my opinion. He has once again won the Maurice Rocket-Richard Trophy. He's going for his repeat Stanley Cup, as we all say. He's such a great player. So regardless, the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to win this Stanley Cup, but I don't think that they'll be able to do it in convincing fashion. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, they'll sweep the Nashville Predators or they'll win it in 5. I think it's going to go a little bit harder, a little bit farther. I think it's going to go to 6 games. Yes, eventually they will win at least 1 game in Nashville. But Nashville's going to be putting out their entire hearts out into this lineup because, as we said, they're making history. This is the first time that they've made the Stanley Cup final. So they're going to be playing their hearts out. It will be like San Jose last year with Martin Jones stealing them a couple games here and there. You know, they went to 6 games. So I think Nashville will end up Smythe. I think Malkin, you know, he's looked really good and he's been able to step up a lot. So I'm going to say Malkin with the Conn Smythe, and I'm going to say Pittsburgh with the Stanley Cup in 6 games. Kevo.
I wanted to be different, everyone. Because it's more compelling YouTube TV to have some different perspectives. I wanted to come on here and say, you know what, people are overlooking Nashville. This is their moment. They've got the goaltending, they've got everything, they've got this crowd, they've got all this momentum. All of that may be true, but sadly, I can't do it because, like I said at the start of the playoffs, this was about legacy. I just picked the wrong guy. I thought it was about Ovechkin's legacy. It's about Crosby's legacy, and it just unfolded before our eyes. And I just look at a guy like Crosby, and I think he's going to. Just think he's on a different level than anybody else that is playing the game, including Connor McDavid. It's different. We're seeing history here. I think that Pittsburgh will win the first 2 games. Nashville will tie the series at home, but I think Pittsburgh at the end will win in game 5 and game 6. So I'm seeing this going to 6 games. And I think that Malkin will get to the Conn Smythe and give everyone, as part of the NHL top 100 the middle finger for not putting him on that list.
That's freaking ridiculous. That's freaking ridiculous, man.
The most ridiculous snub in sports history.
Seriously, Kev, though, that is so dumb. Like, how do you not have Malkin? Like, I tweeted it out and I said, he's arguably top 50. Like, how do you not have him in the top 100? That's
because he's always overshadowed by Crosby, and he always will, which is unfortunate.
Okay, so for Kev, or for Adam, Kev just gave you his prediction.
Adam's the better looking.
Yeah, Kev's the better looking one. Adam will give you, I think he wants 5 games. Like, based on what he said last time, he really thinks that Pittsburgh is going to dominate this series. And this is the first time I've ever heard him be so confident in one of my teams. So I got to give him an applause. And he's going to take 5 games. And also 5 games.
He wore him down.
His big stat was the way that dynasty type of teams perform against teams that make a run that are not necessarily supposed to be there. And that's supposed to be Nashville in his opinion. So he thinks it will be a pretty short series and it will be Pittsburgh in 5. For me, I was debating between 7 or 6 games. And before this series, and really after the first round of the playoffs, after I saw Nashville beat Chicago, I was like, Nashville's probably going to make the Stanley Cup. That's just the way they look like they're playing. And it turned out that we were right from that point on, that Nashville looked like to be the best team. I picked Pittsburgh to win the Stanley Cup before the year. I picked them to repeat. So I'm going to pick them to repeat again. I did it at the beginning. I did it in the middle. I'll do it again here. I think that they will win this series in 6. I was going to say 7, but since Nashville doesn't have Johansson, which I think is a huge loss, I think that's basically a loss in itself, like one singular loss. So I think that Pittsburgh will win in 6. I think it will be a very competitive series. I think all games will be decided within 1 or 2 goals. I think Nashville will give them all that they can handle for those 6 games. But I think that Pittsburgh will end up winning the Stanley Cup because I think they're destined to do it. I think it's their time to get that back-to-back, be the first team since Detroit to do it. And I think, like we've been talking about Crosby and this team basically on another level and just on a mission to win this Stanley Cup. So I think that Pittsburgh will win in 6 games. Adam says 5, Trent says 6, and Kev said 6 as well, I believe. I'm going to what?
Yes, I said 6.
Yeah. For the Conn Smythe Trophy, I am going to say, because you guys said Malkin, I'm going to say Crosby. I think that he'll actually have the stronger of the series. And when we saw that Crosby wasn't necessarily the number 1 point producer in the playoffs last year. He did end up winning it because he was the overall best player. Phil Kessel actually had more points than he did for Pittsburgh. But I think we'll see a similar fashion. Malkin may have 1 or 2 more points, but I think Crosby will end up being the guy at the end of the day that might have a couple more clutch plays in this series that ends up getting him the Conn Smythe and his 2nd of his career and his 3rd Stanley Cup. So We're all picking Pittsburgh, kind of boring, but that's not to say that Nashville has no chance. I think Nashville has a good chance. I think if we said like the keys to the game, if Rene has a couple of stellar games where he steals it, if the defense can play their top-notch hockey and shut down Crosby and shut down Malkin, and if they can get some guys that we've never heard of to step up at center and produce some good hockey for them as well, then we could see Nashville potentially getting the upset and maybe winning. But it's going to be a good Stanley Cup final, I think. I think it's going to be very competitive, and I think it's going to be fun to watch. I'm hoping that a lot of people around North America and, even across the world are watching this series, because I want hockey to be the best it can be and the most people watching it as possible. So I hope it's good. I hope it's great, and hopefully my team wins. All right, guys, we have anything else to plug or discuss? We say bye?
Yes, I have things to plug. For the Bottom Line View, I did a State of the Seahawks podcast. What Trent is looking at the actual screen, like shocked that I did stuff. And
I'm so excited, Kev. That's all. I'm just so excited. I can't wait.
I did a State of the Seahawks because of Colin Kaepernick, the ESPN article, and the legacy of Cortez Kennedy was a hectic week in Seahawkville. So I talked about that. Also, I am, if you're into wrestling, the story of Jinder Mahal is a fascinating story. He actually trained in my hometown of Calgary, Alberta, and I know some people that worked with him. So we are going to do an interview of the story of Jinder Mahal and how he rose into this prominent position as WWE champion, and his trials and tribulations and how he got there with some people that actually worked with him. So I'm looking forward to doing that interview, because I think we don't get to see. I've been kind of bugging Mitch about this anyway, that we need to do more interviews on the Bottom Line View, because for a number of different reasons. I think it lends to credibility, but I also think that people have these presumptions about how someone gets to the top, and we don't always know that sometimes that there's some trials and tribulations. So I'm looking forward to sharing that story that will come out at some point this week. The story of Jinder Mahal from Calgary, Alberta. Not from India, but from Calgary, Alberta. Anyway.
Yeah, all I've heard about Jinder, just to throw out here, is I've heard that he's a super nice guy. So I'm intrigued to hear. I'm intrigued to hear the interview. But anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed. To plug a couple of things, we have Stanley Cup recap, game number 1 tomorrow night. Make sure you're there. Make sure you let us know.
Is Trent needing to recap something? What's his faces doing over there?
I was just going to throw out a few little things that I was going to do on the Bottom Line View if you guys are interested, because as we said, Stanley Cup final, we're already so close to the end of the NHL season. But don't worry, because we still have a lot of NHL to come out within the next week or so. I'm working out in my lineups right now. I will have the first mock draft of the first round for the NHL coming out hopefully sometime early this week. I'm also going to be making a video about the predictions of who the expansion draft of the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who are they going to get? I'm going to see if I can get Kev. I'm going to see if I can get AC. I'm going to see if I can get Mitch. I'm going to see if we can get all of us involved to do this. And I'm promising you guys this. Mitch did tease this a little bit earlier with possibly a Game 6 or possibly Game 7. I promise you that at least me, myself, and I, if no one else can make it, if there's the elimination game, let's say that Pittsburgh's up 3-0 in the series for Game 4, and on.
Bro, I'll be there. What you talking about, bro?
We will be doing a live reaction video, kind of like we did, for the Game 7. We kind of wanted to make it explicitly Game 7s, but if it's an elimination game, I think we just gotta do a live reaction video. And if you want to come and be a part of it and watch it with us again, great. That's awesome. Subscribe to the Bottom Line View. Comment down below if you have any more great ideas. And guess what? As we also teased a little bit earlier, the NHL and NBA, they're kind of staggered in a way that we're going to be able to do them all kind of quite continuously. So expect a lot of recaps for a lot of different games, because we're just getting bigger and better every single day, because we got a lot of new cool stuff for the Bottom Line View. Kev's doing a heck of a lot of new stuff. AC's doing a bunch of new stuff. Dilly's always working. Mitch is always working. I'm always working. So what are you doing? Subscribe, like, and comment to the Bottom Line View because we're getting bigger and we're getting better, and it's all because of you guys. All right, Mitch, peace us out.
All right, bro, and I'll leave us with this comment from Jay. He says, it's just the year all the legends are going to win. Brady, LeBron, and same with Crosby. All right, guys, thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow night. Peace.